Okay, good morning. So the holidays are definitely upon us now, right? And I heard that a lot of you had some fun last night out caroling. And this morning I got here early. I forget that you started at 10:30. And so I got to listen to Michael's playing, and he hit on all my favorite songs this morning. And I have to say, there was back in October, I think it wasn't even Halloween yet, I was out somewhere at the store and they were playing Christmas music already, and I was grumbling about that. I was definitely like the kid who doesn't believe in Santa, rebel without a clause, unhappy about that. And then right before Thanksgiving, we got hit with our first big snowstorm, right, in November, and I was grumbling about that too. Tamsin, on the other hand, was out playing in the snow, building snowmen with her friend, and by the way, do you know what one snowman said to the other? You smoke carrots? Okay, have I delivered on my obligation to start this party with one bad joke? Yes. All right, now we can get down to business. So, all right. So, wherever you are regarding the holidays, they do come to an end in January. And one thing I like about January is no matter how we come out of the holidays, people tend to be optimistic in January, right? They have new ideas about what they're going to do for the year. There's a freshness and an optimism, and because there's so many people holding that space, we can often draw on that buoyancy of other people for ourselves when we might fall off the wagon. So I know a couple Januaries ago, I went to Trader Joe's, and I've told some of you this story. I had to restock on food after the holidays, and I made the first corner past the flowers and the dairy section and into the produce section, and the shelves were almost completely empty. And I'm not talking about just some low. It's like big patches of emptiness except for maybe Brussels sprouts and cabbage. And I had a moment of panic because I don't watch TV. Sometimes I miss when a big event has happened. I thought, has something tragic happened? Is there a food shortage? I don't know. And so I went up to one of the employees and I said, what's going on? Did a truck not arrive? 2 trucks not arrive? What's going on? And he said, oh no, it's the first week of January. This always happens. He said, produce sales go up and candy, cookies, and wine sales go down. And he said, but definitely by February, and sometimes only the 3rd week of January, everything's back to normal. And I thought about that too. I work out at the Y, and always in January I'm on the treadmill, and I see all the new faces coming through for the tours, right? Everybody's coming through with wide eyes, big ideas, resolve and commitment, right? But usually by February, I don't see any more of those tours happening. And what is it that happens? Why is it so hard for us to sustain that? Even in the church business, we talk about CEOs, Christmas, Easter only, people who come at Christmas and Easter. And so they have this motivation early on, but unless they sustain it by February, they've lost that initial motivation that brought them there. So, I've just mentioned physical health. That's one of the most common resolutions that people have, but also we might have them about relationships, our career, finances, aspects of our character. No matter what it is, though, some people say resolutions go in one year and out the other, right? They don't stick around. So I was thinking about this, and I went to the Oracle of Google, like I often do. Thank God for Google. And there's some really pretty sobering statistics about our resolutions that we make. One New York Times article cited a study that says 33% of people fall off the wagon on their resolutions by the end of January. At first I thought, well, 2/3 are sticking with it. That's not so bad. 50% of the people fall off the wagon by the end of July. Again, it sounds bad, but that's pretty good. 50% are keeping it up for 6 months. The more sobering statistics I saw, this is the most cited study, a gentleman out of England. He said 88% of participants in a pretty expansive study he did fail in their commitments. 88%. What was really interesting about that is that 88% fail Yet 52% of the study's participants were confident of their success in the beginning. Really confident. And yet 88% fail. That reminded me of a story I read in the Big Book of AA. When I started into Al-Anon, which is for families and friends of alcoholics, I wanted to have some more sympathy, empathy for people who are in the AA program. So I started reading their book. And there's a story of a gentleman who, I don't remember how long he'd had sobriety, but it was pretty long. And he was on a business trip and stopped into some diner to eat a meal, and they happened to serve alcohol. And he thought, I'll just have one, right? So I don't know how many hours later he woke up from a lack of unconsciousness and realized he'd had 4 drinks. And then in that moment, he said, I've already screwed up the whole day, so I'm going to have a 5th one. And he threw the towel in. Now, I don't have a problem with alcohol, but I can certainly identify with that resignation mind, right? Like, I screwed it up. I'll just give up. I'll throw the towel in. Let's call the whole thing off, right? We can all identify with that. And, I've certainly had times where I was this confident 52%. I'm going to make this. I'm really present to my goal. I know I can do it. I can see it. I can smell it. I can feel it. And then I wake up from this fog, and I've fallen off the wagon. And sometimes I've been unconscious so much that the wagon's not even in sight anymore. Not only did I fall off it, it's just, where'd the wagon go? And I sat there and I thought, who was that Susan who made that commitment? Who was she? And where is she now? Because I'm not that Susan anymore. So so I was thinking more about that 88%. And by the way, if anybody knows the 12% who do maintain their commitments and their resolutions, let us know, because we'd like to book them to speak the first week of January here. Let's get them on the books. So I was thinking about this 88% failure rate, and it was a little disappointing and depressing. But then I got to think, 88%, what that tells me is that there's something normal about failing with these resolutions. It's got to be somewhat normal. It's way over 50%, 88%. And I had a certain compulsion to start looking at why people fail, unrealistic goals, not tracking progress, and how to fix it. And then I thought, I'm just going to sit with it. That's normal and okay, not to follow through on these long-term goals. There must be something normal. The Buddhist, one of my great Buddhist teachers I watch on YouTube, he says, if there's no solution to a problem, there's no problem. I've been taking a lot of solace in that, especially in regard to other people. If there's no solution I could do, there's no problem, and I can step away from that. So, perhaps that we can think it's a flaw, that we can't maintain these resolutions, but maybe the flaw isn't in the people. It's thinking that we can actually maintain this long-term attention and focus. And cognitive science, I read up a little bit on that, our prefrontal cortex is not wired for that long-term commitment. So, for this year, I've never been a big person on New Year's resolutions, maybe because I haven't maintained them. But I do notice that as I've taken a different approach in my spiritual practice, which is really slicing the moment, down to the moment, not long-term stuff, but how am I going to manage myself in the moment? Go from, as I talked in previous talks, shifting from the ego mind to the spiritual mind. And as I've done that, what's been amazing to me is that goals that I didn't necessarily focus on are just unfolding with velocity and ease in ways that they never did when I was trying to focus on those and force them. It's that in that moment approach that has paid the most dividends for me. So that's what I want to talk to you about today is as you start looking toward the new year, if your spiritual practice is one of those things that you might be putting on your list, is instead of looking at these quantum leaps, maybe look at that moment again. That moment where we're conscious and we can make the shift from the ego self to the spiritual self. So I tried to get some graphics this time. Again, one of the things that I was talking about is our first thought and our second thought, and I was distinguishing ego mind from a spiritual mind, and trying to get a gap in between these so that we're not in this habitually reactive mode of the ego mind. We're trying to get a space there between ego mind and spiritual mind. We can get to a place where ego says, this is the way it is, to a spiritual self that says, I don't know. Maybe I need a space so that I'm not trying to solve a problem with the same mind that created it, right? Like Einstein said, is getting a little space in there. So again, I'm not saying give up any resolutions that you have, and I'm definitely not saying give up on any resolutions about your health, eating more produce and getting to the gym and all of that. But I'm just saying in a spiritual practice, if all we did was focus on being able to get a begin-again mind, if we've fallen off the wagon, we just begin again. We're going for a new thought mind, a return to love mind, because any long-term goal anyway is a process of sustaining individual moments and stringing them together. So, really, I'm going to give you a couple examples again. So instead of exercising discipline, we want to look at cultivating this begin-again mind, this return to love, this new thought mind. Instead of quantum leaps, Abraham Hicks talks about don't try and do quantum leaps. We're looking at gradual transformation. We're looking at non-resistant unfolding, trust in emergence, they say. I've talked in the past about Stuart Smalley. We're not trying to carpet the world. We're going to put on slippers in that moment. We're trying to shift our mind from focusing on the effects, the level of effects, which is manifestation in the world, and shift it to the level of cause, which is our thoughts and our perception. Shifting again in the moment from right-wrong evaluation to what works, what doesn't work. Focusing on the now. Again, we're bringing it there now, to the now with our spiritual practice, because really that's the only place spiritual practice can exist, is in the now. We're looking at feeling perfect, whole, and complete through a subtraction process, a letting go of resistance, removing our blocks to love rather than an addition process, right? We often think, if I get this, if I achieve this, then I'll have serenity. I found the new spiritual place to go, and now I'm going to get it. Or, I signed up at the gym, and now I'm going to do it. And instead, we're looking for letting go of this resistance and having it in the now. The other thing that we get out of it is going from being reactive to being at choice. So, and again, this is a way that we are looking at building spiritual muscle and not going from, which is what I have here, to a big muscle, but gradually working it up. We're building strength so that we're less prone to spiritual injury in the future, and we are less prone to have this spiritual muscle atrophy. So. One other thing I want to leave you about with the spiritual practice, if you're looking for 2016, is to consider what I would call a three-pronged approach. And I in past talks gave you a lot of strategies for dealing with in-the-moment situations where we're triggered into our ego self and we're having a hard time accessing our spiritual self. And again, one thing I talked to you about was the 3 A's: awareness, acceptance, and action. We're creating that gap. I talked about creating a gap to be with this place of awareness and acceptance. And we're using that space to reframe our experience. The ego comes from a place of lack. The ego comes from a place of injury, comes from a place of someone's wrong, someone's to blame, whether it's me or somebody else. And we need to just create a space so we can reframe something spiritually. When we reframe it, we get a different experience out of it. And we get to pull ourselves off the the hamster wheel of ego thought, of reactivity. It gives us the space of, like I said here, the gift of the I don't know mind, the question mark. So that's what we want to do. So I want to review one more thing that I went over in the past that you can use through the holidays and into January, and that was this this outline of Wosu, which is being able to identify where you are. Again, if we're going to be able to take hold of ourselves in any one moment to make that transition back from ego state to spiritual state, spiritual self, we need to be able to identify when we're in an ego state. We have to have that awareness first. We can't make the shift until we know where we are. It's like a GPS system. They can't get you somewhere until they know where you are first. So we want to be able to identify it. There's probably many ways to do it, but I came across this one. I find it very, very helpful just to see where we are. And also, I like it because it gives us permission to be wherever we are. So sometimes I reverse it because I know I'm starting more in a place of unwillingness than willingness. So Wosu or Usao, however you want to remember this, unwilling, skeptical, open, and willing. So there's unwilling. I've seen that face a couple times this week, and sometimes in the mirror. You might be sitting with a relative these holidays that you've got some feelings about. Now, are you going to get from some resentments toward this person to, I love them, I want to hug them, I want to make sure we spend all the holidays of this year together? Maybe not. But maybe a good first place to start is to say, I'm unwilling to see this person differently. And then at least we can draw a boundary around ourselves, and if not to protect ourselves from that person, to protect them from us and our unloving thoughts at the moment, right? Okay? So I want to give you an image. Next image, skeptical. Like the Buddhists say, you don't have to let go of your position, just don't hold it. So I gave you the image before of, I'm in my cage, I'm not giving up my idea. I still think that relative's a little bit of a jerk, but I'm not going to close the door, and I'm open to another possibility to see them. Open. I'm going to put on slippers instead of insisting that the world is carpeted. Okay, I'm open. I still wish things were soft and cushy for me, but I'm going to let it begin with me. That's that openness. And appropriate for the holiday season, the gift of the I don't know mind, the gift of gratitude, the gift of, like A Course in Miracles says, in one of my past talks, I gave you that great reading where it says, no matter what's happening with my brother, I need only feel gratitude toward them for what they can teach me about myself, for what they can reveal for me about my own spiritual program. So, Wosu. Don't want to get to that yet. So again, that Wosu is a spiritual framework that you can use just to identify yourself in the ego state. And that, again, with that first prong of a spiritual program, which is, I like to think of it, if you want to use a medical metaphor, we have an emergency response, right? We get triggered in the moment. It happens a lot at the holidays. How are we going to respond? How are we going to manage ourselves in that one moment, which is going to be a series of moments all strung together? So then there's, you can take the other two prongs, a rehabilitative therapeutic approach. I talked in past talks about being able to take a fearless moral inventory. That's one thing we do in the 12-step traditions. Making amends, dismantling the buttons, right? When we know we got triggered, first we have to deal with our trigger and the emotional fallout, the mental fallout of that. But then once we do that, too, we have to remind ourselves, oh yeah, I had a button there. And during a less challenging time, maybe start to dismantle that button. That's that rehabilitative therapeutic response, right? We're going to start to use spiritual context, spiritual prayer as braces on our teeth, on our crooked teeth, on our lame leg that hasn't been serving us well. And the third prong on a well-rounded spiritual approach, spiritual practice, spiritual program, spiritual habit, building spiritual muscles, is to do some preventive or prophylactic work. So prayer and meditation every day, just setting ourselves up ahead of time. We've laid a foundation so that when things come at us, they bounce off us a little more. I was thinking about this. A lot of you who enjoy football have probably just been having a ball this fall, right? I don't watch football. I can't. I have trouble. I always look at it with a mother's eyes, like, oh, my kid's getting beat up. He's going to be in a wheelchair. And I'm just amazed. I see them clash together, and I think, geez, if that were me, they'd be medevacing me out in a helicopter. And yet these guys just get up and brush it all off. And that's because they do a lot of preventive maintenance. They're exercising. They can withstand that, whereas I wouldn't be able to. So the same thing with spiritual practice. If we start exercising these muscles on a daily basis when we're not in challenging situations, when they do come along, they're going to bounce off us a little more. We're going to have more resilience. And every time we keep working that muscle, guess what? Then we don't have to do that emergency response as much. We don't need the medevac helicopter to get us out of these situations all the time. So preventive actions, again, I'm on the third prong. Prayer, meditation, developing a network of like-minded people. It's tough to be around that. What's that? Hanging out with the turkeys or flying with the eagles, right? You want to start surrounding yourself with like-minded, spiritually oriented people. Seeking a higher power. And there are a lot of ways to approach a higher power. It doesn't have to be a God that you learned in religion. It just has to be a higher power higher than this brain. That's not hard to get to. I can find a higher power through all of you. I can find a higher power in enlightened people and in people that might occur to me as unenlightened, because as Course in Miracles says, I always have something to learn from everyone as we're seeking at one-ment. Another really, really important preventive action, and this is important again for, like we said, is recognizing the ego state. We can't make that shift again, that emergency reframing, that emergency response, unless we can even recognize the ego state, right? Otherwise, we're just in that unconscious fog of having fallen off the wagon. So when we recognize that ego state, not just in ourselves, but in others, you'll see that during the holidays, right? Recognizing other people's ego states is to respond with gentleness. I told you at one time, when I catch myself in something that is a little embarrassing, or I feel that I want to start defending why I acted that way, I just try and lighten it up, and I go, busted! I'm busted! I caught myself. Just lighten it up. And then, again, the whole point of what I want to share today is, rather than a long-term thing, it's just developing that begin again mind, that new thought mind. In this moment, okay, I screwed up. I can begin again. Rather than, as the Buddhists say, getting caught in identity view, making myself wrong for being wrong, and I'm back on that hamster wheel of ego thought. So being gentle with ourselves and others. Course in Miracles says, you know what, if we see something in the other person, if we see where they're failing, it's upon us to take the high road and to be gentle and loving with them, not to remind them of their wrongness. The Buddhists say, and probably some other spiritual programs, when we see somebody else acting that way, a good response is, just like me, just like I do at some level. So again, with this, trying to develop the habit of a begin again mind, one thing I take solace in is that spiritual practice, again, like I've said earlier, is usually a process of subtraction, not addition. We don't have to go somewhere. We don't have to get to the gym to practice. We don't have to have something arrive. We don't have to have that new job, that new relationship, all of that to be there. It's really a process of subtraction. And so what I'm saying is, at some level with spiritual practice, we can be a happy couch potato, because there's no place to get to. There's no place to go. It's really, we could sit back on the couch and pick off our spiritual barnacles, right? We can pick off the resistance. We can remove the blocks to love. There's no place to get to other than getting back to this underneath that we really are perfect, whole, and complete.